Nope.
Okay. Um,
Perfect.
all right. So I'm super excited. So my name's Doug Walsh, and I have started a new podcast, and I've got my first guests, Carolyn Charles with the Equine Assisted Academy of Learning. Is that? I know you got a long.
Yeah, we got along. It's Equine Connection, the Academy of Equine Assisted Learning, Inc., if you want to be super
Super
specific with it.
like what you filed as with the Canada courts.
Yes, exactly.
But I'm super excited to have you guys. We've known each other for gosh, like probably 6 years now, 6 or 7 years now,
At
and
least, yeah.
and putting together this podcast and basically this whole platform that I have is a horse trainer myself and someone who works with troubled horses, misunderstood horses. But then really when I started getting into it, I for myself too, and it's been a long journey for myself when it comes to things that I've been through in my life, that my own personal horses, more than my clients' horses, have mirrored
Mm.
me and what I've been going through in my life, even back from like a little kid. Like things come up and fears that we have and those things that we would never think affect us, but really do.
Yeah.
And so I met uh, Carolyn and Carrie, who unfortunately is not on the call today, but we'll have her in at a later date. But met you guys probably about 6 years ago. You had come in, and we were doing I was with somebody at the time that wanted to do the program, and I was super excited about it. And so you guys came to South Florida and got to see what was going on, used a couple of the horses that I had. And in a nutshell, you do equine assisted therapy, and typically you work with people who don't know a lot about horses, right?
Yeah,
That's like,
absolutely.
so you have people that have had either teens with troubled past or not troubled past, or women's empowerment groups or business groups that when it comes to like team building exercises, things like that, that's your focus of your program, correct?
Yeah, well, and addictions recovery is a big one that we work with now as well, because seems to be kind of the missing link with addictions recovery too, is the reintegration, because your whole life has to change after, right? So that it's kind of getting those life skills together, because although horses are therapeutic, we aren't therapy because we're not therapists, but we can still help people to develop those essential life skills while working with a horse through that connection piece with the horse, which is huge to everything that we do, and keeping the welfare of the horse. But it really helps them to build the life skills to be able to move forward with their lives in a positive way and start again, because that's really, you know, we have to change all the time. That's our lot in life, is that as life changes, we have to go with it. So that's what we help people to do, is gain those life skills through working with horses, which is the best way to do it, if you ask me.
Well, it really is. And when you say that, it brings up a lot of thoughts to me, because I know that there's a lot of also programs put together for ex-military, um, that are suffering, a lot of these military people, and thank you for serving our country here in the U.S.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you feel the same way. Is that there's a lot of training that goes into getting the military ready for combat, right? And so like when we think about when we work with horses, like when you go, friends of mine that are in the military, they go through this program of like prepping them for the worst case scenario and how they're going to deal
Mhm.
with that and mentally be right to deal with that when they're in combat. And when we work with horses, as a horse trainer, we want to help prepare our horses to understand what they might be going through in life, working with humans, right? So like, a horse is a horse in a sense that in the wild, they're pretty content and pretty happy, and they don't need to learn how to use their body or do different things. And they communicate very well with their herd and
Naturally.
naturally, right? So,
Yeah.
so just like humans naturally can communicate fairly well with each other on the day-to-day basis, but you look at military, this example, they have to learn and retrain their brain on to see things they're not used to seeing and to do things they're not used to doing. So, which is great. But then when they come out of the military and they've seen that, then there hasn't been in the past a lot of things in place to help them to
Yeah.
then get back into into
Everyday life,
everyday
not
life,
waiting
right?
for
Like,
the other shoe to drop, right?
yeah, like I've heard testimony from some people that in the military that, like, that when they're away, they can't wait to come home. And when they get home, they don't know how to, like, handle
Live.
being at the grocery store with their kids buying, like, like Oreos and Funyuns when they don't their brain is so rewired that when they're home, they just want to be back on tour. And so it's and there's been a lot of breakthrough through equine assisted programs that have really helped people, because you might have a soldier that's been in battle and seen so many things, yet here's this person that's fearless, but then all of a sudden they get up against a Mustang that they're trying to tame, and they're like, they have to really bring their energy down and get to a certain point. They've also used
Absolutely.
horses with rehabs for people in prison. So so these are people that we're not even talking about that are horse people, right? So we're
Yeah,
like, talking about, like, what you guys do is it goes way beyond the scheme of anybody who is watching this as just a horse person. It's like, if you've had trauma in your life, if you've had, and we all, let's face it, I mean, nobody's had
yep.
a perfect life. I mean,
Nobody's exempt from a tough life.
yeah,
That's
and I
all.
mean,
That's all there is to
yeah,
it.
and our versions of toughness are different from one to the other. I mean, like,
Absolutely.
you could have been through something that was far worse than me, but it's my own version of what I'm going through that's made me who I am today. We look at attachment styles, and that goes back to, like, now helping raise a 2-year-old child. I'm looking now and I'm like, oh my God, like, we're shaping him right now for
Yep.
how he's going to be when he is an adult. And if we don't do a good job at that, and we don't monitor that and help him be a secure individual, man, that can be like, that's a lot of weight on us, right? Like a
Totally.
parent to roll.
And what a
So
great parallel to horses. They have that same stacked memory piece that we do, right?
yes,
So as
yeah,
we build, we develop ourselves, we are all a result of our experiences in life, right? So, you and I could go through the exact same experience and have completely different takeaways from it. That's the beauty of working with horses, is that they have that piece too, right? They do have that stacked memory that allows them to build themselves as they move forward, and move forward absolutely, because they don't think like us, obviously. They don't think, act, and respond like people. They think, act, and respond like horses, but they still have that piece. That's such a great parallel, because as we are shaping how we work and connect with our horses, it's the same as how we work, how we shape and connect with ourselves and other people. There's a huge parallel to how those pieces go together, and both should be taken equally seriously if we're working with horses and if we're working with people.
and and that's I guess another, that's a great point, and that's something I was going to ask you. Is it so, like, when you were just talking about stacked, like, so the whole goal with this is, whether you're a horse person or you're not a horse person, is how can we look at the traumas that we have, because horses, just like children, have that stacked memory. They also have the mirror neurons, which we have as adults, but they're much more pronounced as children, like
Mhm.
monkey see monkey do. Like,
Yeah,
having a 2-year-old in the house, like, I do something, he does something, and you look at horses, and when horses are young, they learn the same way. But also, when what I have found, and in my side of the world, is that if I'm working with a horse and I have things internal, especially if it's a sensitive horse,
mhm.
right? And you and I have
Yeah,
seen this together working together. If I have a sensitive horse, that horse is going to pick up on my sensitivity, and if they're not at a place of peace in their life, right, and security in their life, and we talk about, people look at horses and go, oh my God, they're so majestic, and yeah, a lot of them in the wild are very majestic and they're happy, but, like, when we bring them into our world, horses don't live in the present. They live on what they have been taught in their past. So they're living in the present based on their past, just like we are, right? So we're a product
absolutely.
of our past. And if we're living in our past um, every day, then our future is going to be based on our past, not the present, in order to go forward in a new light. So talk
Absolutely.
about that a little bit, like, when we talk about, because you're using the horses as, because, like you mentioned earlier, you're not a therapist, you are a facilitator, and
Mhm.
you allow you allow people to work with the horses, maybe walk through your day of kind of what you go through with say, let's do addiction, because it
Yeah.
sounds like it's kind of something that's like, I think that hits a lot of people. It doesn't matter if you're addicted to drugs, alcohol, I mean, a lot of us are addicted to sweet
Coffee.
coffee, whatever it may be, right? So let's talk about that. Let's kind of dive into that for a minute of kind of what you would go through with your horses and how they help the individual, and
Yeah.
then in turn the individual helps the horse then.
So the logistical piece of it is we always bring in our clients and we do the safety piece first, because just as horses, the number one thing a horse needs to feel is safe.
Yes.
Truly the same thing for human beings. The number one thing we need to feel is safe. And whether that's in a learning environment, a home environment, whatever it may be, we go through a lot of the detail about the horses and how they will actually speak to them, because we don't use horses as tools in this. We partner with our horses. And why we always like to switch that up to partnering with is because it's not about us taking what a horse does and adding a humanism onto it to tell the humans what we think they need to know. Humans have their own answers to their own questions. It's phenomenal. We all do. We just don't know how to access those pieces. But by working with a horse on the ground, we're not riding them or anything else like that, they're able to access those pieces and then see the results of them changing behaviors right in the moment. So logistically, we bring everybody in, we have a quick briefing on how the program's going to roll that day and what we're working on. Because every time they come into a program with us, we're developing a skill. And it's really, skills are like placing an armor on our body as we go out into the world, right? If you gain that communication skill, and I don't care who you are, how far you've come in life, we can always learn more about communication. But if you're gaining that communication skill, it's really like putting a piece of armor on your body to take out with you in the world, to protect you, to help us to feel safe. All those are good pieces that we need. So they gain a different skill each time they come. And then we head out to the arena, and that's when we go through some obstacles. And it's funny because people refer to it as games sometimes. We're always, it's no game. This is real life, people. These are life skills. But they go through the obstacle because when you're working with another human and you're working with a horse, there are so many things that come up as to how we do those pieces together, how we work with a horse together. Every single horse in a herd is part of the team. They have a job. We try to get that same thing going with human beings working with horses together too. So if there's a lack of communication, or if someone's feeling stressed or frustrated, we watch for our horse's reaction. We don't come in and say, hey, your horse is frustrated with you. You must be frustrated too. We don't need to give them those answers, but we can say, oh my goodness, let's take a quick look at our horse here. What's going on? Ooh, his head's pretty high. Absolutely. So what's going on? Why would his head be so high? You know what? I'm super frustrated because he's not moving. And I just am trying to move this horse forward. And as soon as people are authentic to those pieces, they say their truths, they do those things that allows them to just release it and move forward. It's amazing. The horses will move, or the horse's head will come down. And those are the things that we can facilitate. Okay, did you see what just happened there? And they'll say, oh my gosh, yes, I saw that. So why did the horse react that way? Because I was actually able to speak my truth. And that means what? Safety. It's okay to be frustrated as long as you're authentic with being frustrated, right? We don't have to be perfect, and that's irrelevant in life to walk around in love and happiness all the time. It just isn't how life works, right? So when we can be authentic to where we're at and mindful of where we're at, that's when our horses will really choose to work with us in the most beautiful ways. And then once we do a little bit of time in the arena, about 40, 50 minutes, then we come back and we do a debrief, because we have to take all of those skills that we built in the arena and parallel them back to everyday life. And that's kind of where the magic happens too, because otherwise you've just done a fun time in the arena and you've had lovely time with horses, but if you don't bring it back to how you apply it, people are still kind of at a loss. So that's a really huge portion of it as well, to help people bring it back. And one of the biggest things that we find with our addictions recovery clients is they say that this is the only time they can be in the moment. One fellow last week, he sat there, he said, this for me was focus. And we were like, oh, well, why focus for you? What did it mean to be focused? He said, I have anxiety. I am riddled with it. That's what brought me to my addiction, is that I don't know how to focus. I can't be in the moment. Out there, and it was his first program, for the first time, I was in the moment and I was not anxious. I was able to just be. And the gorgeous part of that is now he knows he's capable of it, right? Before he didn't even think that was a possibility to have in life. And now he knows that he's capable. And he didn't do it for himself in the moment. He did it just through interacting with the horse and wanting to not be better, but to adapt themselves so the horse still got to feel safe. And it's through that empathy piece that the horse feels great. and the human feels great. And that's when we have those beautiful reciprocal connections and partnerships that people can allow themselves to move forward in life in a different way. And it was just that, to me, was huge, that that's the first time he had been able to release and be in the moment and focus on something in, well, he said like 40 years.
Well, and it's funny because I was thinking, like, when you just said that, I was, as you were talking, I was listening and absorbing everything. I was thinking to myself, that one of the biggest things that I think that horses do for us, and I think it's anybody who, like, we've had people come to the farm that are not horse people. And
Mhm.
it's the only time I've seen them when they're petting a horse or anything, that they're not on their phone. They're not, and look, let's face it, we do it to ourselves as a society, right? Where
Absolutely.
if I text Carolyn and I see that it was delivered and she hasn't responded back to me in 5 seconds, what is it? Is she mad at me? Is she like, why can't she reply to me? Am I not that important to her? And we
Hmm.
have such a busy life that we've created, right? Like, I mean, I'm old enough to say that I remember, like, before the internet, and I remember, like, when you'd have to, like, call your friend, leave him a message on the answering machine, wait for him to call you back, and then we had internet that would dial up and it took forever. And now we are on track to making things faster and faster and faster and faster,
Instant. Yeah.
which is wonderful. But going back to almost like the training of our brains, like in the military, and I'm not military, I'm just going off of what, like, I've read in
Hmm.
front, but, like, we're training our brains to be faster and faster and faster, but are we doing anything to train our brains to actually be mindful? Now, there's great people out there, like Jay Shetty, who's got an amazing podcast, On Purpose. If you haven't listened to this podcast, he's like one of the most inspirational. He was a monk for 4 years. Yeah, I mean, you have to. Jay Shetty is one person that, like, if you want to just listen to some great things. Lewis Howes is another one. Dr. Joe Dispenza, some great things of just people out there now that are just teaching us as individuals how to slow down a bit, right? Like, how to take that time, because we are so busy. And I like Jay Shetty says that he said he meditates, and don't quote me, but I think this is pretty much what he said. He said, if if you meditate an hour a day, and which you should, and he goes, if you don't think you have time to meditate an hour a day, that means you need to meditate 2 hours a day.
It's a
And
valid point.
and it is, right. And when we talk about, like, mindfulness and meditation, there's times that, like, if I'm really struggling in my day with, like, a lot on my plate, right? I mean, we all have so much. You guys have stuff going on. I've got horses in training. I've got 2 businesses. I've got a beautiful life with someone who's got a little tiny person that I've never had a little tiny person in my life. So now I'm trying to juggle that. And it's so important for me to take, even if it's 5 minutes in my car, to, like, just find that, like
Yes.
recenter and come back to a place of being present. And horses, as you were just saying with that gentleman you're talking about, is that horses really, the great thing is they don't lie to us, right? So
Nope.
they're anywhere from, if it's a mini horse, from 400 pounds up to 2,000, 2,500 pound animal, that thank God they don't lie to us, because they could be very, it could be very bad, a very bad thing if they did. But, like,
Yeah.
they're and they're almost 100% energy based creatures. Now, we still, as humans, and I think children are higher on the energy
Absolutely.
based nonverbal communication. Right now, I think they say that on average we're between roughly 70 and 90% nonverbal communicators still as adults. But we are so busy that we miss that part of it, in my opinion, right? So,
Absolutely.
and we're so fast paced that leads to, I believe, um, more undeserved traumas that we put in our life, right? Because we put more stresses on ourselves. We do these things,
Hmm.
and it's like a snowball effect. Um, and if we just take that breather, and I think that what you were speaking to on that was, for the first time in 4 years, this gentleman who had an addiction to something can look at, now, if you're addicted to horses, that's okay. Yep.
Yeah.
No, but
You're
like,
just getting a good
like
job.
everything. But I mean, like, but even, I love riding horses. But, like, yesterday, I, like, spent some time. Like, Kelly and I went to the beach and, like, hung out for a couple of hours, and that was, like,
Hmm.
that all need that balance in our life, and that where you can set the phone down, you can be present with each other, and that's so important in my opinion. But like, do you find that like with looking at the mindfulness, I think that that's a big part of us being able to grow, because if
Huge.
we think about our lives and like where we are and where we want to be, right? Like you said, is that every day is a day for new growth and new opportunity throughout our life.
Absolutely. One thing that Carrie and I have come up with lately is the recognition that we know nothing. Now, this is a very freeing statement for us because we know lots. Like, and when it comes to horses, we know lots about horses, right? And how they think and how they move and how they do all sorts of things. But if we are naive to think that we know it all, then we are at a loss, right? Then
Yeah.
we're going to mess up somewhere because we're at a loss. But it's funny with the mindfulness piece, we can always learn more about how to be with that. And horses, they bring us to that place. Like, we've all been the places in life as a facilitator and as a client, those sorts of things. We've all been in those places where our heads are full. And, we have more sensory receptors in our gut than we do in our brain. Yet we use our brain to process all of the information before listening to our gut. Horses, they don't do that piece, right? They don't have the same kind of prefrontal cortex or thinking capabilities that we do. They are that I'm safe or I'm not safe. What's going to kill me? That's really what they're looking at all the time. So for us to take the moment to be mindful with our horses and really like hone in, that's a selfful thing to do, but it also benefits our horse. That's the reciprocal piece again, that we can actually tune in and connect and allow them to feel safe. We have Kokanee is a big Hanoverian thoroughbred that we have, and he has probably been one of our greatest teachers of all things. His major teaching is ambition, and he's an ambitious horse. But if we're on our phones, we're sitting in there and we're getting back to an email, he will come and knock it out of our hands. He is
Yeah.
very clear that's not where we live right now, right? Because that's not safe. That's not focused in. That's not being mindful to where we are and how we need to be working with them at that moment. That's the exact same thing we need to do in life. And like you were saying with meditation, now I will be the first person to say I suck at meditation. Anybody who thinks you're just going to sit and stop thinking, it's hard work. You cannot, like, it's really difficult, especially if you are a very analytical person like I am. It's really hard to let your brain clear and let those pieces happen. And up to this point in life, the only way I have achieved that kind of mindfulness piece is working with horses.
Yeah.
And it's a learning piece that all of us need to come to, but it's selfful. And when you can get to those beautiful places, it's phenomenal because our horses respond so well to us being mindful with them in the moment. And the worst thing you can be as a horse person is complacent, because that's not safe for them and it's not safe for us. And as a regular human, to not live in your moment, you're missing your whole world. So it's one of those things that can completely keep paralleling back between horses and humans and horses and humans. But horses just have this, I love that you majestic, because it really is a majestic capability of bringing us into our moments, allowing us to sit there and know what that feels like, even to be mindful of our moments and our actions and our bodies and our person and our bodies. Oh my gosh, we just keep learning about that. We had Chris Irwin out, and Chris is phenomenal with the horseman side of things too. And it's kind of a mind meld for us sometimes as to how we work in the horsemanship with equine assisted learning, but it all does work together when it's about connection. And that's one thing. I have no idea what my body's doing half the time. And I think people don't realize that body language is huge. I don't know where my belly button's pointing. I don't know what's going on. And bringing ourselves back to living within our person is such a benefit for our horses, but it's such a huge benefit for us in everyday life. We forget what it's like to live within our person and really be there and own it and feel comfortable with those pieces as well. I think I went on a super different topic tangent there, but
No, but it all connects, because when you had said at the beginning of when you started talking, and that's this portion here that you said, it's very important that, like, so Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about we can't control our thoughts. The only thing we can control, I mean, we can control our thoughts to a degree, but it's the emotion that we attach to our thoughts that gives us the outcome, right? So the brain does not know the difference between, if you had a traumatic event that happened to you 10 years ago, and that traumatic event wrecked you inside, made you nauseous, made you like just wrecked you, and then all of a sudden you see a trigger that reminds you of that. say it's a car accident or something. You
Yeah.
see, you see a car accident that's very similar to your one that you were in. You attach an emotion to that thought. Immediately, your body is going to go into the exact same physical state that it was 10 years ago at that day.
Hmm.
And that to me is has helped me tremendously, because when I look at something or look at how my day is going or look at what I'm doing with horses or just in general, is that I'm a product of the emotion I attach to things. So like if we've had past trauma, right? So let's just keep it something simple for say relationships, right? So you've
Yeah.
been every guy that you've been with has cheated on you, right? And then so you meet a guy that's super nice and is like is really genuinely a nice guy. And you meet him,
Hmm.
and because I had a client, this is very interesting. So I had a client that had a horse that she had as a baby, raised it, is like 4 years old at this point, was doing really good, performance horse. And then she had to have surgery. So then she sent the horse off to a different trainer um, for a year. And the horse was atrocious, was like attacking people, like couldn't
Oh,
be
wow.
ridden. I mean, just was just unhappy. So she asked me to help her out. And so I started working with the horse, and I saw these parallels of kind of like what was going on. And I said to her, I said, have you ever been in a bad relationship? And she's in her 60s. And she said, yeah. She's like, I was married to a guy who was physically, verbally, and emotionally abusive for like 25 years. And I
Oh.
said, are you still with that person? She said, no, I finally got out of that relationship. And I said, are you with somebody now? She said, yes, I'm very happily married now for the last 10, 15 years. And I said, how did that go? And she said, well, when I met him, he was the nicest. He was so nice. He would make me dinner. He'd buy me flowers. And when I would come home, I had every reason to start a fight with him, because my guard was up even higher, because I was used to being abused. And now I have someone
Hmm.
who's nice to me, extra nice to me. So now my like spidey senses were really heightened. And
Totally.
it's like, why is this there's got to be an ulterior motive to why this person's being so nice to me. And she said, and so she would actually cause arguments with this person, because she was almost doing self-sabotage, because she knew that it was like
Totally.
going to be good, right? Now, thank
Yeah.
God
And the skeptical piece of our brain kicks in, right? Because we're like, oh, this is what I know as the
yes,
outcome of being nice to me that the other shoe's about to drop, right?
yes, I put that emotion to the thought, right? So then all of a sudden he continues to be nice to her, and the emotion that she's putting to that thought starts to change. He's not like my old relationship, right?
Hmm.
He's not that person. So she starts to trust more, starts to have belief more. That emotion starts to go more into a, not every man is like that. There are good men out there. And so in this example, now she's super happily married. She's like, and so, but then the reason why I brought this up to her is because she's like, well, the horse was fine before, because when I first, and she's
Hmm.
like, and I wasn't with the horse for a year, and then I came back, and it was like, okay, well, it's like you sent your horse off, and it was treated horribly. And then all of a sudden you come back and you're trying to be really nice, and they're now going, hey, humans now have done something bad to me. So now
Hmm.
my guard is up. Even though you're really nice and you were safe at one point, you're not safe now. So then we had to rebuild that trust and rebuild that safety. And just
Absolutely.
like in the horse, I know that and you and I've, talked about Dr. Stephen Peters, and he's been on your
Hmm.
thing. And he has proven a lot of stuff, that horses are very similar in their thinking, that, like they can self-regulate, right? This is something that when we talk about, I've had discussions with people in the past about horses that, they can't rationalize things. Well, if they can self-regulate, they can go, well, this is a better reaction than
This
just
has
leaving
this
town,
outcome and this has this
right?
outcome. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they have to go to a point where they can go, oh, I can trust this person. I can be there. So, but if you have a horse that is mistrusting, you have a person that's mistrusting, you have a horse that's attaching an emotion, which is, I got to get out of here. I got to protect
Yeah.
myself. And you have a person that comes in, whether they're a horse person or they're not a horse person. The great thing is horses see right through you, which is why
Absolutely.
you have a great successful business, because those people, those horses go, aha, I see how you are. And I'm either going to test you because I feel the same way. So we're going to battle a little bit until we get through this together. Or if you have a secure horse, they can go, I can help you with that. So
Yeah,
that's where I think that it's super exciting when you look at um, that piece of how our brain works and how we really look at the emotions we attach to things, because horses do the same thing. And but we think,
totally.
oh, and but then they're a prey animal, so we're predators, right? So we wonder what's for dinner tonight. They wonder if they're going to be dinner tonight,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it gives us a little bit more of a side of compassion for them, um and I think that that's why they're such majestic creatures, and that's why everybody who, like, I can't tell you how many times that if I'm even just hauling my horses somewhere and I've got the side open and they can see the horses, and people just like love to look at horse. And when
I
they
know.
do it, but I've seen more times where people in cars next to me will, like, the kids in the back will put down their tablets and their phones and just like look and smile, and that's power. That's
I still
power.
do it.
I know, it's so
I saw
powerful.
horses.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why we're doing what we're doing today, is we're going, well, like, how can we help people find, because like you said, the biggest piece that I took out of what you said with that example with that gentleman is, in the first time in 4 years, he was able to be present, and
40 years.
40 years, 40
40
years,
years.
he was able to be present right now. Like that's deep. And like, I'm not afraid to admit, like, I've I've had a counselor I've seen in my life for traumas that I've had in my life. And counselors, I think, are great in certain times. But if you look at what a counselor is trying to draw information from you, right? Ask
Yeah.
questions verbally from you. How did this make you feel? How did, you know, put emotion to that? Because if we can put emotion to that, the great thing about horses, which I think is wonderful, and I've seen, no disrespect to any counselor or therapist out there, but
Hmm.
that I think that horses do that's actually more, I guess, just more raw, is that
Hmm.
the horse brings that out in you without saying a word. Like they
Oh,
like it's magical, right? And that's what I think
it
is,
truly is.
and horses have saved a lot of people's lives.
Myself,
You
I will
know,
fully attribute being able to move forward with my life and be, for the first time in my life, the authentic version of myself to working with our horses. And, we say with this course all the time, to anybody who signs up, we always tell people this certification is just as much for you as it is for every other human being that will ever walk through your door. Because for me, that was the absolute truth. It was them that brought me to a completely different place where I could figure out who I was, be authentic to who I was, and be proud of who I was. And that was, frick, at that point, 35 years in the making. Like it's amazing what they can do. And I did the counseling thing. And again, for people who can do those things and access that stuff on their own, kudos. Like I am, therapy can be a beautiful thing. And especially for people with PTSD and all of those things, absolutely. Therapists, psychologists, certified people, those and all of those professions are hugely important. For myself, I didn't know even how to access it because it was so deep. And something like I had depression for years and years, something like that. I just didn't know how. I didn't have the skills to be
yeah,
able to get into those pieces within myself. So when they would say, well, how does that make you feel? My brain said, well, I've dealt with it. It's just a story now. Whereas
yeah,
my whole being was very, very different. And the horses were the ones that truly saved me. And I will say that every single time they saved my life. And I didn't start as a horse person, but the benefit that I got is when I was working with horses, I didn't think about the horsemanship side of thing, like I'm going to desensitize this horse. I'm going to, or any of those pieces. It was always about connection.
yeah,
And I think that was the greatest benefit that I had coming into the horse world, is that connection was always key. It was always about that piece first, safety, allowing them to be safe, the horsemanship side. It's all incredibly, incredibly important, but connection is huge. And that's that connecting to yourself and connecting with your horse in a different way as well. And it's just, yeah, it's phenomenal what they do for all people. It truly is. And when, even as a human being, a lot of times our brains, our thoughts betray us in a lot of ways because it's not true, or it's not authentic, or it's not where we are actually at. But they can discern the difference between those calm and nervous energies. And even if what we're thinking and what we're feeling are not in alignment. And I tell people regularly, when your horse is doing something they're not moving for you, or they're not behaving the way that you expected them to, or something like that, take it as the greatest compliment that you have ever received in your life, because that means that they know you have more.
Yep.
And that means they know you are even more of a leader. They know you are even stronger. They know you have these capabilities. You just have to fulfill that piece for them now. And it truly is the greatest compliment you can ever get when a horse challenges you a bit, because then you can step up into the place that they want you to be at. And that's a much different way of thinking of things, rather than going to, man, this horse sucks, or he doesn't listen, or anything else. It's just, how can we adapt for our horses? Because that's what taking care of the welfare of them and helping them to feel safe is really all about at the end of the day.
It really is. And, God, like, I mean, I didn't have my calling in horses until later in life, as well. I've been training now for about 15 years, and due to, got into it, wanted to, had allergies, so debilitating, couldn't do it. Had a fear
Yeah,
of horses, got a really bad concussion on a horse, decided to kind of go into the natural horsemanship side of things. And I have a huge passion for what I do. Huge, huge. I mean, like, you're kind of like when you wake up and you have that aha moment of your calling. But as I've evolved, so I didn't come from like a traditional way of training horses. So
yeah,
all of my training has been based off of, if I have a connection with a horse, just like a relationship. Like, relationships take nurturing, and you can be married to someone for 50 years, and in that 50th year you're still growing, hopefully you're still growing. Like, there's a couple things I was thinking about as you were talking, that kind of just like popped into my mind. And Tony Robbins had said, I don't know if you know who Tony Robbins is, but he's an amazing
yeah,
motivator speaker. And he had said that disease is dis-ease in the body, right? And
absolutely.
it is true. Like, we look at stresses, like when you, and it made it pop in my head when you said that you would talk to your counselor, and mentally, like, we take things, and go, okay, depression, okay, like, I can get through this, this is how I dealt with it, right? But it's all below the surface, right? So everything from the neck down is what our body is trying to do to handle everything that's going on. And that's where all
Absolutely.
the bad stuff happens, right? Like you said, the gut is, like, it's been proven to be like our second brain, right? Like, and there's so much stuff that we hold in, because I think that this was a while back. It was like, well, boys were taught to be men and not cry and do these things. And like, I'm more on this, like, the empath side. Like, I'm probably more of an emotional man than, I'm still a man's man, but I'm more of an emotional man.
Hmm.
I'm not afraid to show my feelings about things, which has really helped me with horses, because um as I've gone through my own journey, it's helped me to kind of bring a lot of that stuff to the surface and go, you know what, um we have this is not a dress rehearsal of what we're in our life.
Yeah.
And time flies when we go by. I'm going to be 48 in a couple of weeks here, and I feel like I'm 20 still, but like, it's amazing that as we get, and I don't want to say older, because I was talking to a friend that's a little bit older than me, and he's like, Doug, why do you tell people your age? He's like, it's not about age. I'm like, I don't tell people about my age, because of, like, it's more like wisdom, right? It's like, it's about just, is the more time we spend on this planet, the more we get to observe, the more we get to learn, and and I think as we get um uh more knowledge in our brain, we do less talking, more listening, and we just kind of soak things in more.
Hmm.
And that's what horses has really helped me with. I was listening to the thing that Tony Robbins did, and he had a couple in the audience. It was like in their 90s. They've been married like for like 60 or 70 years, and they were like
Wow.
affectionate with each other and all this stuff. And he said, like, what makes you, I'm like, you guys have been married a long time. And they said, well, we always keep it fun, and we always are willing to try something once, and if we like it, we do it again. We'll try anything once, right? And so and I think that whether you're in a relationship with someone or a horse or whatever, it is about that evolution of, you had made a comment that we don't know everything. No, like, like, if the minute we think we know everything is the minute we know nothing, right?
Absolutely.
And I'd heard, I was listening to a book on tape, and a gentleman was being interviewed that was like the president of Intuit, and he retired
Mm.
in like 50s, and he retired And he said, I wanted to retire while I still had more questions than answers. And,
Well, that's good. I like that.
and it's pretty, and it's, so we look at, so my passion is really stays so much with the horses, but it's really, as I've dove into this, it's really like, um, what do we have to learn from them in order to teach them? So as a horse trainer, it's like, you hear this saying a lot in the horse training world, trying kind of like Cesar Millan probably did with dog training, is like you're rehabilitating the dogs and training the people. But we're
Yeah.
really not. We're rehabilitating both. The horse needs our guidance as a professional to help them find that way. But a lot of times that person that is their person needs to open up, whether you're a horse person or not. Like you find
Hmm.
horses in your business model that aren't spooky and that aren't like you want horses that are pretty solid horses that have
Steady
had that
eddies.
are
Yeah.
seasoned. They've been there, done that, experienced life. So then,
But responsive, not
but
shut down, right? We still
not
need the
shut down.
responsive piece.
Yeah, because
Yes.
we don't want to learn, and I think in horses and people, if you've heard the term learned helplessness, right? And learned
Mm.
helplessness was, um, it was a study that they did, I think, like in the 50s or 60s, where they took rats, put them on one half of a grid that was electrified, and on one half that wasn't, and they turn a light on, and when the light came on, if the rats didn't move, they turn on the electricity, and this horrible shocked these rats, and they moved over.
Yeah.
Well, very quickly the rats learned if the light goes on, they move over, right? So then all of a sudden they electrified the whole thing, turned the light on, the rats had no place to go, and after a couple minutes they just stood there and took it. That's learned helplessness, right? When we get to a point in life
Mm.
where we're so unhappy with our life, we're so unhappy with the circumstances that we're in a depression, and we just learn to deal with it mentally. But are we living
Yes.
life, and our body is the one taking all the pressure and all the heat for that?
Yeah. It's incredible to think that for the human brain, and kind of, I guess in the horse brain too, because they do shut down, but anything can become normal. And that's a scary thought. Like when we've worked with some women who have been through the sex trade and that sort of thing, and who have been trafficked, and anything can become normal to us as when we're in it enough, just like with the shocking piece, right? With our horses, it's the same. Anything can become normal, and yes, they can shut down completely. But the thing with a shutdown is people like to use the term bomb proof. It's really not. It's just ticking time bomb,
Yeah,
because you desensitize until you can't. And it's the same with humans. You can shut down till you can't. And it's either a complete shutdown and loss, or you explode.
yeah,
And anything can become normal, but you have to really think and be responsible to the fact, for your horses and for the people in your life, what is okay to be normal. It's not okay for a horse to be all by themselves and not to be their normal. It's They're a herd animal. They need other horses. They have that piece within them. It's a basic piece of them. So to ask them not to be, to ask, and some of the things that people do in different equine assisted learning platforms, or even just working with horses, they're asking horses to go against their innate piece of themselves that is what makes a horse, right? That flight prey animal piece is inherent within them. Asking them to let predators walk underneath their belly all day that they haven't had a connection with or anything else, what's that asking? What's that proving, right? If we're not thinking about what we're creating as a normal for our horses and for the humans too, what are we giving them? We are just kind of, piling things on top to desensitize rather than connect. And again, that goes back to that piece of what are we creating as their normal in life? Because it should be something that we're thinking about with our horses is what's their normal.
yeah,
Are they
yeah.
allowed
And
to be a horse?
well, and it's very true. And I guess that getting back to like, so you look at that and you look at what a horse is I mean, like you look at what horses are willing to do even over people, and what they're like. I mean,
Yes.
I have some horses that, and I've always said I don't really necessarily believe in I think I understand the word desensitization, but I've always believed in the fact that a horse needs to understand what they don't need to be worried about and what they do need to
Yeah,
worry about, and how that aligns with us as their partner, right? Because at the end of the day,
totally.
they're our partner, whether educating somebody who they've never met before, You guys have had the chance to work with one of my horses, Carlos, and great teacher that could read people
Love
very, very
Carlos.
well. You know,
Yeah.
he's a wonderful, wonderful horse, enjoying retirement now. But man, what a special, special horse that had a lot of his own, traumas in his life that he overcame those traumas and found trust and found peace within people. And I guess my biggest question to you is, with you had mentioned earlier, is that you if it wasn't for the horses, you would probably be on a different path in your life. So
Absolutely.
where do you find that the horses really helped you to find that sense of peace? Because you weren't a horse girl really before that,
Not
right?
at
And
all.
you're not an avid rider, and you don't you're
Nope.
not out there competing and showing, and that's where I think the blend comes in, that people that are horse people, you have the performance horse people who are doing it to win and to do things, which then can really get skewed into the horse becomes a product. And so my job is to try to help those people find that balance of, like, when they were a kid and they spent all that time with their horse and they just loved it, and the relationship they had with their young horse, or their horse when they were young, is a lot different than when they have
Mhm.
a relationship with their horses now. So how do you, not, and then you have those people that are like the pleasure people that just do it for pleasure, and then they have the people who just love to be around horses. So just walk me through really quick, like, how did your interaction with horses really, really take a hold to help you get through some things that you had to get through?
I think the biggest piece for me is knowing they couldn't lie. My whole life of leading me up to that point kind of taught me that people do, right? Don't
Yeah.
trust, keep the walls up, protect yourself, but you try every now and then and you kind of get kicked for doing it. So it was the first time that I had been able to understand that this is a genuine relationship, a genuine reaction. And it was through that piece of, honestly, all the horses bit me is what happened when I went through a really hard time. And I based my life kind of imploded all at once. And I went in to see the horses and I went up to Jordy. Jordy was our little itty bitty curly horse, just my snuggle guy. And I went into him and he freaking bit me. And I was like, well, that's kind of a jerk thing to do. Went to another horse, Comet, my greatest teacher, and he bit me. And so did the other 8 horses. And I was like, what is this? And then because I was not that horse person and I was always listening first, I thought, this is the greatest compliment. What does this mean? And it was the first time that it kicked me in the butt enough to believe in myself enough, because I knew they couldn't lie to me. People would tell me, oh, you're better than that. You're worth more than that. You don't have to take that kind of stuff. Da 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 da. But people lie. When I was with the horses, I knew they were literally moving me forward. Like, it's time, step up, step into your own life. And that was the greatest compliment I ever received. And the first time I was able to believe that I could was through them and their reactions to me. The day that I decided, this is what I'm doing this career, I'm moving forward with my life, I went in and told Carrie, yep, I'm on board. This is how I'm moving forward. And I went out to the horses and not one of them bit me again.
Wow.
It
And
was
that's
phenomenal.
pretty magical, right? Because it goes back to their energy and them. Sometimes they need to do what they need to do um
Yes.
to show you, like, it
And they
was
don't go
really
around, we don't have biting horses. We have
no.
very good horses. It was that I was that unsafe to them in how I was feeling at the time, right? So we have very safe horses. We wouldn't get insurance if we didn't. But it
Well,
was
and
just to that point of the kick in the pants.
but it is very interesting because, like, I was so I have a Mustang that was wild, and he came not even from a holding pen. He was wild gelded. I got him, and it was interesting because I was in the round pen the other day, just playing with him, spending time with him, because I'm a big believer
Mm-hmm.
in, you have to, it's not always about just doing tons of activities with your children, right? Like, as I'm finding, even with, like, the 2-year-old, is like, we just have downtime. Sometimes we just hang out together. It's not always about, like, stimulation all the time. So, like, I was
Yes.
I was in there and the gate was sagging a little bit because I built a new gate, and over time I had to readjust it. And so I was readjusting it, and he was in the round pen. I'm sawing and doing things, and and he's very much a like focus on me now type of horse. And he was doing
Yeah.
his thing. And about 10 minutes later, he came over, and I'm like, he's not he used to be a very afraid horse, but like I'm like literally drilling with like a hammer drill. And next thing I know, I've got like someone bumping me from behind, and he's like he's like up here and basically saying, hey, and reading horses, it was like, hey, can you focus on me for a minute? Can you engage with me for a minute? And
Hmm.
those are the things that we miss if we are constantly, and I meant to bring this up earlier. I'm glad it just triggered it. Is that we are, because you had mentioned about being, but it's important to just to be around horses, and we are human beings. We're not human doings, but we
Hmm.
act as if we're human doers all the time. And human beings is we are supposed to enjoy and take in. We've got a 2 million year old brain that's always trying to worry about what's going to kill us, because that's what we're triggered to do. So it's so important for us, as we kind of wrap up this call, is that, is I think the biggest thing to get out of today is that, when we look at trauma in ourselves, it, like, if I look at today's topic, it's about being present, and it's about being
Hmm.
in that moment and being able to take that moment, even if it's, I
Yes.
mean, I've been in your program, and I know that you don't have people come in and spend 3 hours or 5 hours with a horse. You spend between a half
Nope.
hour, 40 minutes. They do exercises that are designed to get the person to be present with the horse, and vice versa.
Yeah.
If I understand that correctly. And in that 40-minute, probably it was probably within and correct me if I'm wrong, but like, what was the length of period that gentleman had that gave him the first peaceful time that he's had in 40 years?
I would say within 30 seconds of them coming in the arena with these horses, they are engaged in the moment. You can't, whether your horse is 1,000 pounds or 1,500 pounds, as horse people, sometimes we forget that initial, like, "Ooh, crap, those are big," right? That moment of like, "Whoa, I better tune into what's going on here," because it does put us in a vulnerable place just by being in with them. It does cause a little bit of fear and intimidation. But within 30 seconds of them being in that arena with those horses, they're tuned in. That's the first thing they're looking at. They are not thinking about what they're going to have for dinner at the center that night. They're not thinking about, man, I really wish that I could have my drug right now. They're not thinking about or going to any of those other places. They are just there in that moment with the horse because you have to be. Horses do not allow for anything different. So when we've got our big Canadian Faye, she's standing right there. And if he does start to waver, you'll see they'll start to walk away, or they'll, come in and put their muzzle on them or something like that. And we can ask that, oh, okay, so what is that? What's going on with Faye there? Well, she started moving away because I started thinking about all the other stuff and I had to come back to her. Like within just stepping foot in the arena, sometimes even before, when they can see them through the window, they engage and they start to live in that moment with the horse.
Well, the fascinating thing about this is that whether you're a horse or you're a human, in a lot of cases, less is more, right? I mean, I've studied some of the most successful people in the world, and when I say success, I
Mhm.
mean full success, not just financial success. Happiness within, um, spiritually successful, financially successful, emotionally successful. And the one thing that it always goes back to with all of these people that find that is they have a very selfless heart. They
Mhm.
want to do things, they want to provide a service to people that helps people find value in what they do. And that's why I started this podcast, because um, I want to be able to be a voice to helping uh, understand why people, whether you're a horse person or if you're not a horse person, and you have things that are going on in your life that you just don't feel like you're able to get through, that maybe you reach out to a program like your program,
Mhm.
and or and I know you guys have people all over the world that you have trained to do this, um, and or if you are a horse person, to be able to really start to take it and look at your horse from a different light. And what I have found time and time again, and this is with consistency is big in anything in life, and you can't sit on the couch and go, I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to be a millionaire, and I'm going to be
Hmm.
peaceful, and I'm going to be in shape, and you're sitting on the couch watching television. You're not going to get there.
Yeah.
Everything in life takes effort, but it's how you apply that effort in order to not let the monsters that are inside you take over, to say that I can't get this done or I can't get this accomplished. So it's taking one day at a time, but also reflecting back on those days, because then all we have is one day at a time. If I do
That's it.
today, and I do today in a way that I want to do it, to find happiness and peaceful and feel like I'm doing something for the world, and I'm doing something for horses and for people to have good relationships with not only horses but with themselves. Because let's face it, and I'm sure you've been through this too, is that the one person that I have to get along with really well is myself, because I spend more time with myself than anybody else I'm ever going to spend time with.
Yep.
And if I can't be happy with myself, then I can't project that happiness to anybody I'm around in the fullest way that's going to present it to be able to help other individuals find that peace and happiness as well. And
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody's there. I think we're all working on it. But if we can work on it as a community and work on it together, and we can utilize horses to help us get there, then why not? It's a wonderful, wonderful I think thing in life. And I'm so excited that you were on today. And like, if anybody
Right.
wants to reach out to you, I guess, um what's the best place to reach out to you, or to find out where there's an area in your anywhere in the world that people could go to
Yeah.
help with this?
Our website is probably the best one, is equineconnection.ca, equine connection, singular, not plural, .ca. And we do have people all over the world. We've got maps on our contact page as well that can show you people that might be in your area too. But that is probably the best way to connect with us. And we're on all of the socials too. You can find us. We're just on all of them now. So find us on any of those, connect with us, and we are always happy. Like you, Doug, we want to spread knowledge. That is our biggest piece in all of this. Is we do believe that every single person has purpose in this world, and you have to take care of yourself first. But our job and our purpose is to help others. It's to serve, right? And if we can help horses by spreading knowledge about their welfare, if we can help people, even if it's one person at a time working with a horse, we believe that that's what our passion, that's what our purpose is on this planet, to spread knowledge about horses and to help people working with horses as well. And that's how we want to move forward. So even if it's just checking out our Facebook page, we have loads of lives, loads of information that you can take back, work with your horses in maybe a little bit different way. And Doug, go check out, we've actually did a couple lives on there, Doug, and they were really good. So go back and check out Doug's old lives on there too. We've got a few.
We had some fun. So, well, and the thing too is, I think that, to even broaden it even more, is that, like, it's, even if you don't have, like, so, like, we're targeting such a large audience of people that are into horses and not into horses, but, like, and I think it's like, I look at it, it's like horses to humans and everything in between, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
it's just gonna benefit our lives with friends, with loved ones, with other animals that we have. We can look at things in a different light. The thing I love about the horses being a prey animal is that we, once we look at it through their eyes, and an animal that um that is not a predator, that is a herd-based animal, that has outlived so many other species, right? So many other predators, everything. So horses have a lot to offer in their intelligence and why they do what they do,
Mhm.
and their commitment to family and their herds, and their commitment to loyalty, and their commitment to boundaries, and respect for one another. It's very laid out, very clear. And I think that when we look at that, whether you're raising children, or you're communicating with other adults, or if you're working in team building with work, is that if you look at the structure of how horses actually are in the wild with one another, we can learn so much from them about
Huge.
the presence of being, in the presence of boundaries, the presence of respect, the presence of loyalty, lovingness, compassion, all is what sums up to me what we should be doing when we work with horses domestically. And then also what that can do for us in our own lives and finding true balance and peace and happiness. And that way we can spread that to the people that are closest to us. So I greatly appreciate
Absolutely.
having you on, and it's been a joy. And I know we need to do another one with Carrie when she can get on.
Yeah,
But
she
yeah,
would love that.
anything you want to close with or say?
No, I love today. And I think, like you were saying, we've got so much to learn from horses. It's just tapping into that piece of appreciating what they have to teach us. And as horse people, sometimes we get a little caught up in a task and getting something done, or this needs to happen or that needs to happen. And one thing we constantly ask ourselves is this task or is this team right now? And if we are on task solely, then we might need to tap a little bit more into the team. And if we can do that, then that's something that we can get that connection piece going, and working with our horses in a different way that helps them, it helps us. And we get to spread a little horse love around the world. And that's what it's all about.
Well, and that's a good point that you put on, is because task also, like when I think of tasks, I think of very like my brother's super A-type personality. My brother is like task oriented, and I love it because it's like helped me so much.
Yeah.
But like I'm more feeler, he's more thinker, right? And so like when we think about tasks, for any of those people out there that are like that A-type, like I'm task driven, I've got to do this, is it, those are the people that need I think that have a harder time going back into that like presence, feeling, attaching emotion to something, right? When you talk about
Being
it
connected.
like attachment theory, people that are like anxious attachment typically end up being from child wanting to have their family involved more. So when they become adults, they're more anxiously like more like feelers, where if you have those people that were neglected by their family or had to be on their own at a young age, they're more they're more avoidant attachment style. So they're the ones who push everything down deep and more I want to say emotionless, but more detached from motion and more task driven. So
Yes.
the goal for all of us to become more of like that secure, where we can be task driven, but we can also find the emotion to why we're doing what we're doing, and then find that balance. So
Yeah. And it's all about the balance with it. You got it.
yep. Well, thank you so
Well, this
much.
was a blast.
I'm super excited for this and the journey going forward that we're going to have with this podcast, and you take care of yourself. Give Carrie my best and her family, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much.
Take
It
care.
was
Thanks
great to
again.
be on.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.